Good night and welcome to Mindful Life. I'm sticking 241. Thank you for being here. Yeah, welcome. It's live 241. I am your host, Nathan Springer, and it is the 16th of the 6th in the year 2023. The year is speeding along. It's already past midway through June. And the news is nice. We're talking today about Tobago. You know, usually on the Mindful Live, usually Tobago Day is Wednesday. That's the day usually we leave to talk about Tobago exclusively. But when the Tobago news comes, the Tobago news comes. As people point out, there isn't Tobago and Trinidad. We live in the Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So Tobago news is our news too. And the Chief Secretary out of Tobago. And this I think is pertinent even with the local government election in the year, because to me what I want out of local government election, for those of you who follow along with the Tobago politics enough, for those of you who follow along in this live and keep up with some of that Tobago politics, you can see some of the bacchanal in the Tobago politics and all of that. I think we should be getting more of that in more local governments around the country. That what is happening in Tobago, there should be happening in Shagona, should be happening in Cuba, should be happening in San Fernando at a more local level. I think you'd actually get more results like that. Like you're seeing the amount of pressure young Mr. Farley is under. You're seeing that this man is under some pressure, and I think that's the kind of pressure we want in nearly every local government context, and we want our local government bodies to have the kind of increased power that like the THA has. I usually say that I'd love to see the Shoguna's House of Assembly. Like, yes, more like a federal system, Trini Hotep. Now, the thing is, Tobago isn't a state. They don't have as much power as a state. And I am even okay with that. That's a step in the right direction, where we decentralize some of the power in the country. And I think that would help us greatly. So that's why part of the reason I like talking about Tobago politics. It has that feel to it. Hey, once you're inside of the live, make sure you hit that like button. If you're viewing this over on Instagram, hit that like button. On TikTok, double tap that screen. That's how you that's how you like the live over there on TikTok. It gets the algorithm knowing that, hey, this is some good stuff. I'm looking at this. Hey, this is good. I like it. So you could like it, and you could like it again, and you could like it again, and you could keep sending those likes up, get those likes pumping. And even on YouTube, if you are viewing this on YouTube, as I stream live also on YouTube, here you can hit that like button, share the video to those who may like this kind of content. Make sure you subscribe if you are looking at this over there. If you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring, over there, whenever you get the time, head over there. Good stuff over there for you to view. Who was the best Prime Minister, Ren asks? That's a difficult question. Now, I wasn't alive much for A.N.R. Robinson, but who was the beat Prime Minister? Well, if you mean who was the beat Prime Minister, I don't know what's that. But if you're asking who was the best Prime Minister, I'll say I wasn't alive for A.N.R. Robinson, so I can't know for sure. But some of the decisions that I've seen, well, I was alive, but not knowing myself. Some of the decisions that I read about that he made, I think he may have been the best. The ability to take on the public service, I'd rate you very high for that. Second to that, I may put Patrick Manning. Reason being, he was at least a visionary. And even with all the accusations of megalomania and dictatorship and all of that, when the man left the forefront of politics, he returned to his humble house in the same place in San Fernando. He never seemed one that grasped for the mansions and the biggest of vehicles. That's who I'd rate in my top two. Right there. But yes, yes, Patrick Manning and Pandy. No. I won't put Mr. Pandy in there because under Mr. Pandy was the Piaco fiasco. And I don't know how much of that you've read into, but Mr. Pandy, within a lot of the evidence in that, was fully aware that it was going on. And he turned a blind eye to it. And then on top of that, Mr. Pandy did not know when to leave. They had to chase him out. They all build Trinidad and Tobago. Well, if you're talking about Bill, I'm not talking about whether I'm grateful or not for some of the work that they did. I am not claiming that Mr. Pandy did no good work in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just saying when I'm rating in terms of best, that would knock him down some pegs. What about Manning and his church? Yes. That's a very strange thing. I have no idea what went on with that. I have no idea. But one strangely built church is not the same thing as hundreds of millions of dollars in a national airport fiasco. It's not the same thing. And bear in mind, many of the questions people asked legally of Mr. Calderhat after Mr. Manning left, Mr. Calderhat won. Up till last week or something like that, he won a case in court, Mr. Calderhat. User, I notice you're partially trolling. So if you want to have serious discussion, we'd have that. But if you go on the trolling vibe, you'll be muted. So carry on. What about Mr. Malcolm Jones? You're just throwing names out. You know nothing about these issues. You're throwing out the red meat. The fact that you are saying some of these things highlight to me that it's just a partisan thing. What about Mr. Malcolm Jones? These are just red meat talking points. What about him? Roa and Cam can't see eye to eye. No, they cannot. You met Mr. Positive? No, I have not met him yet. But don't worry, we're talking, Ronnie. We'll meet and we're arranging for that to happen. But I'd like to see Mr. Positive in the chat tonight because we're talking about Tobago again. The chief secretary came out and explained that he was the voice in the recording. He confessed he was the voice in the recording. What $1 billion loan user? What $1 billion loan? For what? If you want to discuss this, jump into the live and I'd give you the space to speak about it. But you are talking in phrases that were thrown out on campaign trails for slogans. You're not building a point here. Malcolm Jones and the loan and how Petrotrin, you have to build the point. I'm not getting exactly what you're saying here. You have to build the point if you want to do that. And if you're trying to say that in terms of the comparison with Mr. Pandy, then you'd have to show the comparative court case with it. Where was the court case? Because a lot of money was spent chasing after Mr. Malcolm Jones. A lot of money. And when that money was spent, they brought in a certain senior King's Counsel, Mr. Vincent Nelson. And what would you know? It was more corruption under the partnership when they brought in Mr. Vincent Nelson to investigate Mr. Malcolm Jones. The investigation went nowhere. They found nothing that they could prosecute him on. And it ended up a thing where we now owe Mr. Vincent Nelson $100 million. And it's a whole court case fiasco. So again, you have to establish the fact here. You have to establish the fact. Like anyone listening to enough of my lives would know, I love a good criticism of the PNM. I regularly say this. There are many criticisms to criticize the PNM for, but if you're criticizing them, you have to actually do it. And this is my problem with our opposition very, very often. No, I'm not towing a party line. I am speaking about the facts as they are in the public domain. Did they, when the millions of dollars were spent with the King's Counsel and the lawyers after the partnership came into power, did they find anything that they could have prosecuted them on? And what I am saying is that the Piaco fiasco, there were prosecutable offenses there. People went to jail. They have been found guilty. There is something you could look at and say, look, there is the evidence of it. And it's not like it wasn't attempted on the other side. It was attempted. But what is the evidence you could point to? You could point to Picong on campaign trails. And if we want to go on Picong on campaign trails, then we'd speak for nights on end about hearsay and she say and he say. Right now in Tobago, there is some kind of he say, she say about a pregnancy and an abortion and an underage issue and that. But you can't really go off of that because no actual facts have been established in this. Yes, you can ask me, Ren. What about Minister of HDC? The case was good against Malcolm, but they withdrew the civil case. Well, why did they do that? If the case was so good, I guess one is better at hiding their corruption than the other. Maybe. And bear in mind, for those of you who entered the conversation afterwards, this isn't a discussion about which party is better. This was a discussion about who I would have rated as best prime ministers, and the person rated Pandey in the top 2, and I said the Piaco fiasco puts him below that. Are you talking about Minister Marlene McDonald? I understand what you're saying there, Kevin Jones, over on Instagram. Yeah, but that scandal is currently still being investigated. As far as I know, it's still in court. As far as I know. So, you could, if you say she took millions, as is right now, that is not an established fact. That's all I'm saying. A lot was accomplished for benefit of all. These discussions are impossible to have like this, just by the way. These discussions are impossible to have like this. I said my top 2 were, the top 1 is A&R Robinson for being willing to tackle the public service. I wish every prime minister had the testicular fortitude to do such. So he would be my top 1. And if I had to name a second, I would put Manning above Pandey. That was the reasoning. Change the seats that was placed by oppressors to all fail. Why does everyone hate on the PS? Who PS? I'm not sure who PS or public service. Why do people hate on the public service? Because the public service is a drain. To put plainly, the public service takes the most out of our budget. To pay workers in the public service that do not add economic benefit to the country. That's the reason. That's the reason people hate on the public service. Because you're paying workers who do not provide reciprocal labor for the money that they're extracting from the country. So people who work in the private service, they're very much aware that for them to get money, they have to do work. For a farmer, farmers are the easiest ones to look at. For a farmer to get money, he has to plant his crops. He has to tend his crops. He has to sell his crops. After he sells his crops, he gets paid for it. If he's good at tending and planting and growing his crops, he would get more money. If he's bad at it, he would get less money. But that's not the situation we have in the public service. That's not the situation we have in the public service. The public service, They could go to work anytime they want practically. And yes, I know I'm speaking in generalizations, and there are areas in the public service, Michelle Sudan, inside of the health service, etc. And there may be singular public service workers, public sector workers, like one worker inside of one section that is doing a yeoman service and doing the work for 20 other workers. But that's kind of part of the issue, where these 20 other workers could sit there and leech off of the public purse without providing any service. And then in our country, we hear things like, okay, the country now is running a deficit budget. We're spending more money than we're making. And when you look at the majority of the ways we spend money, it's on the public service. As a child of a farmer and working as a farmer, it's not that simple. External factors heavily play. Michelle Sudan, I do farming also. I am aware of the external factors. I was using a simplified generalization to say the difference between the private sector and the public sector. The difference in farming is that the work directly correlates to your earnings by and large. Yes, there are externalities. Yes, there are negative factors that could happen that are unforeseen. Yes. But that's not the same in the public service. Your work doesn't translate to your pay. Getting the job translates to your pay. And that's the problem many people have with the public service. Many people see that public service workers get money for not the amount of labor that they're putting out there. Kevin Jones says the resources they are given are very limited. You would be surprised of the stressors. Yep. So where would you alternatively put money then, if not public service? Back in the pockets of the people you're taking the money from. Bear in mind, as Jonathan Cumberbatch, who comes sometimes into the live and speaks regularly, likes to point out, the only way governments get money is by taxes, by taking the money from people. That's the only way they get money. So if you don't have to pay people, you don't have to take it from others. So this talk about the property tax. Michelle Sudan says, I'm sorry you feel that way. We have no printers, no computers, etc. Yet we blame them. We take our money to offset costs, etc., etc. Now, Michelle Sudan, listen to what you're saying there, right? So our public service right now is funded to be able to have printers, to be able to have computers, etc. We give them money currently to do that. But the money goes somewhere that we don't know. So the problem there isn't giving them the money. The problem is that the people who have the money are misspending it. Sorry, Michelle. It's just the way I'm seeing the name. Sorry. It's the way that it's being spent. So I don't want to put more money into a system that obviously badly spends it. Doug says public service work is poverty. They work for very little pay, so they generally don't care. If that were true, then nobody will do it, Doug 99. If it were true that the public service work is such torture, then no one would do it, Doug 99. There are lots of failures in the service, and that's not on the workers' side. Some of it is not on the workers' side, but some of it is. Some of it is. Don't try to absolve all the workers of their lazy attitudes too. That's not true. Michelle Sudan says, then it's not the public servants, but budget allocations by higher ups. Michelle Sudan, Michelle, you're not getting what I'm saying there. You're not getting what I'm saying there. The budget allocation has been there. If we give the money to the managers of this group to do XYZ, and then because of mismanagement, they aren't doing XYZ, should we give more money to them, or should we take money away from them? It's not lazy, it's disenchantment. Well, if you're disenchanted with your job, leave it. Why are you staying, taking money out of the country if you're disenchanted and don't want to work anymore? That's simple. Or else, as I disagree that if less money goes into the public service, that the money will come back to the people. I'm not talking about in general. I'm not talking about if the government continues with the tax structure that they currently have, that if we smaller the public service, the money would return to the people. I'm speaking in general. We were talking just about a general theory in politics, as it were. What you can do if you don't have an as large public service is have lower taxes, because you don't have to collect as much money to pay for the public service. Michelle says, right, so we punish the public and the workers because the managers / CEOs mismanage. So what do we do about that? You could get, I hope you understand the predicament that you're telling the general public. So I am a private sector person. I make money by going and doing work out there and making that money, and the government takes from my money and pays the public service with it. Okay. You're telling me as a public servant, as a worker inside there, that okay, I am not doing the work that I am supposed to do because I'm disenfranchised. But that's not my fault. That's the CEO's fault. But I can't move the CEO, and neither can anyone in the country. So what should happen is I should continue as a private sector person, continue working hard out there, continue making money to pay into the government, to continue paying into the system that is obviously broken and is not going to change. No, Michelle, I have never said fire the entire public service. I am saying that the public service in general is bloated. In general. I don't, Michelle, pause and take a moment to understand how I'm discussing this topic. I have never called you personally lazy. I have said before in this that there are many hardworking public servants. My daughter was born in the public hospital, and she was born early and stayed in the public hospital NICU. And those public servants, those public hospital nurses really did a good job. I have no complaints about them. So I am not saying in Michelle Sudan, you can join. Okay, I'll see if I can invite you here. I'll see if I can invite you. For some reason, you're not popping up to invite. You can join. You can join and discuss this. I won't mind discussing this with you. I'm not saying that all public servants are lazy. I am saying that because of the structure of the public sector, and this is what you admitted. You said that these workers are disenfranchised. This is what you said further up there. So we have these disenfranchised workers that aren't doing the work. What's the solution to that? Give more money or less? Because that's the general option we have. Alright, so let's say we dissolve the sector. We get a 5 billion free up. That money recovers in less taxes? No, it does not, Ariel. Really and truly it doesn't. What that money would do right now in Trinidad and Tobago, hopefully, if we have a fiscally responsible government, is we decrease our spending, because as it is, we run a deficit budget and we are increasing our national debt. You don't create a problem, then punish people for the problem you create. But as it is, Michelle, you are punishing people for the problem created right now. You see, you're not understanding that someone is being punished as it is. But for you to get paid, the money has to come from somewhere. And if there are public servants who are not working and are receiving money, they are practically stealing money from other people in the country. What do we do about that? Should we just leave that as is? Allow some people in the country to steal wealth from others in the country? Should that be fair? There has to be some immediate alternative for that money, or else it's going to disappear in the galaxy. As it is in Trinidad and Tobago, that money is supposed to go in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Kafka says, fix the issue, start promoting on merit and not because your beard grey and mustache long. I agree with that. I agree with that. The blame belongs on mismanagement. I would restructure management. How would you restructure management in the public service? What would you do to restructure management in the public service? So let's lol RL lol, but that's where it's supposed to go. I'm talking about supposed here. But the public service management structure, listen what I'm saying, Michelle. The public service management structure works on service commission, on the service commission. The service commission that's hired by the president, and they're the ultimate at the top. So how are we working through that? From the service commission come down to the head of the public service, to the permanent secretaries. How do you sort that out? So much corruption and government friends in positions. Yes, Michelle, I know. So how do we sort that out? And while we're thinking about sorting this out, my tax money keeps going down. And the government is talking right now about taking money from me, more money from me, because I own property. If I own property, now they must get more money from me because they have to continue paying. The public service requires more money for us to operate. So we need more money. So while we're trying to figure out, that's what I suggested, Michelle Sudan, and that's why I said my #1 prime minister was the one who was willing to tackle the public service and decrease it. The one prime minister who was willing to do it, and that's why he's my #1. That's where this whole conversation started from. That's what I would do. That's what I suggest. So unemployment goes up. Here's the thing. If unemployment goes up because the people aren't employed in something that doesn't benefit the economy anyway, that may be beneficial in the long run. Maybe we need to untie some workers from being tied up in the public sector to allow them to go to the private sector. Many private sector employers complain that we have public sector job making programs that strip them of workers. Who is going to work in my orange field when they could go and work CPEP for the first 3 hours of the day? And here's the thing. I do not believe that the government's duty, it's not a government's job to find jobs for people. I don't think that's what the government is supposed to do. Then you have more claims on social welfare, increased mental. What? No. No. That's a massive assumption you're making there. That's a massive assumption you're making there. There are many countries in the world. Listen, for the majority of humanity's existence, there was nothing such as a public sector or a public service. You had to go out there and figure out how to get food all on your own. The only thing the rulers did was pass occasionally with their soldiers to take taxes from you. There was no public service. So, and people weren't dying of depression without a public service. Darling, I'm a social worker. In our culture, this is what happens on the ground. I see this every... Well, if you have a country where the government must employ everybody, or must employ the majority of people, otherwise they will go mad, then I think your country is already mad. You understand, like, what are we saying? That we must pay people to keep them sane, and that's what the private sector is there for. So everyone in the private sector, your job in the private sector is to work to make extra resources to pay to make sure we keep the public sector workers employed so they don't get depressed. That's what I do. When I go to work, 25% of the labor I do is to make sure that public sector workers don't get depressed. The government invest in oil and natural gas and didn't diversify. How is that my fault? I didn't say it's your fault, but RL, are you a public servant? I know many people who somehow made it in Trinidad and Tobago without getting a job from the public service. Listen. Let me make this abundantly clear. I am not saying it's immoral, evil, bad, wrong to be a public servant or to work in the public service. This is not what I am saying at all. My mother was a public servant for quite some time. She left because she found the service to be frustrating. It doesn't make sense. It trains workers badly. These are her words. She was a public servant. And she said it gave her rigor mortis. That's the word she used, rigor mortis. That's when you die and you get stiff. That's what she said the public service was like. So she had to leave. But either way, I'm not saying it's some kind of evil thing to work in the public service. But to act like you cannot make it in the country without signing up with the Public Service Commission is ridiculous. And I think we as a, and I regularly talk about this, I think some of this comes straight down from the colonial mentality. And the politicians love that thinking. The thinking that the only way you can do anything is if the government does it for you. If the government give me a work, I can't get a work. So the government had to send me to school. The government had to send, wait, let me start from the beginning. The government had to provide prenatal care. The government had to provide maternity care. The government had to provide postnatal care. The government had to provide babysitting services in some cases. Daycare. The government has to provide the ECCE. The government has to provide the primary school. The government does the SEA exam. The government has to do the secondary school. The government does CXE. The government does CAPE. The government has to pay for your university. Then the government has to find you a job. Then the government has to pay you when you retire. Then the government has to pay to bury you. What are we doing? Like, think about that for a moment. Think about that structure for a moment, what it is. And the structure that we encourage. Well, there's a major dependence on government for services. Yes, but they created it. E. Williams, I believe. Yes, I agree. They created it. What I am talking here is that we can't depend on them. We can't, don't get me wrong, Michelle Sudan. My parents had 3 sons to put through university. And if it wasn't for Gate, I don't know how they would have done it either. So I'm not knocking this, but I'm speaking about us in general here. I'm talking about us as we're talking about solving these things. Okay, if they created this dependence syndrome, do you think that it would be them to break it down, to dismantle it, to uncreate it, if you will? Like, what you say when you're saying we need a change in senior management, it sounds like you're waiting on them to undo it. But why would they undo it if they benefit from it? Like, you're waiting for the politicians to lose some of their power. You're waiting on a politician to get in power that says, you know what, I don't want to have as much power as I do have, so I'll let out some. Has that ever happened? RL says, I understand what you are saying, but the government rejected private industries that would have provided jobs. Create your own. Create your own. I am attempting to do it. People I know have done it and are attempting to do it. Create your own. If we woke up tomorrow in a magical world, some magical parallel universe, not this current one, magical, and all of the public servants decided that they're either going out there and try some entrepreneurial something, try their hand at providing a valuable service for their fellow man, or attempt to help another fellow man who has an idea to do that, help him to do it. All of them leave the public service and enter that. Wouldn't that be a problem that kind of solves itself in that case? The only one in that I would say is difficult, Michelle, is national security. The only one that I will say is difficult to do all on your own is national security. Healthcare becomes expensive, but it is already expensive in Trinidad and Tobago. It's just the average citizen doesn't individually pay for it. But if you were able to divide all of that money that we spend in healthcare to provide private insurance for each person, and you privatize the healthcare service, it would do the same thing. It's not going to fall apart. We're all, with public healthcare in place, we're already creating a massive private healthcare system. That tells you something. And education, no. Go find Mindful Education and follow us on Instagram, please. I think actually privatized education would educate people much better. A private education would be superior to the public education that we're getting now. In my humble opinion, I think a private education would be superior, generally speaking. You know how much for radiation therapy privately for cancer patients? Almost 200,000. Yep. Yeah. I did concede that, Michelle, that generally speaking, healthcare would get more expensive, but it would also get a lot better by and large. A lot better. But yeah, it is, I agree, it would be ridiculously expensive. Now, the truth is, inside of that, some of the expenses in healthcare have to do with the fact that the government gets involved in the first place. Like, if there is supply and demand and competition, by and large, if there's competition between private institutes to do something, the prices go down. But oftentimes the government gets in there and the government gets their hands on the scale, and that's why oftentimes the prices go up. So people talk about the prices of private tuition. The price of university has quintupled and times 10 in the last couple decades. But a large reason for that is because government got involved and assured some of the loans. So many of these just dealt with that. So many of these schools just increased their price because the government got involved. So it's not exactly that. Trinidad people in America have crazy coping, not accurate. Michelle, just by the way, every cancer patient in Trinidad doesn't get treated. Every cancer patient in Trinidad doesn't get treated in the way they want. So there would always be trade-offs. There would always be trade-offs. And like, if you try to think about this from without the emotional involvement in it, just try to see if we could figure it out logically. If we think about it as in a private institute that has a profit-based margin to work on, they have to pay their nurses, they have to pay their doctors, they have to pay everything. Do you think for a private institution to do a surgery or to do an operation, it's going to cost more than for the public institution to do it? Because sometimes the mistake we make is thinking that the public option is free. It is not. You could read in our budget how much it costs. So it's not free, it costs. And where can those costs be given back if it wouldn't being taken out like that anyway? And on the side of public healthcare, one of the main issues with public healthcare is everyone carries the weight now of the most unhealthy people in society. Yes, I saw Farley. I listened to his whole speech. But public healthcare, and I'm not saying in and of itself this is a terrible thing. It's the nature of almost anything in the public realm. But public healthcare basically causes the healthiest people to carry the monetary resource weight for the most unhealthy people. Because the most unhealthy people would be the people, generally speaking, that use the healthcare system the most. While everyone, generally speaking, would be paying into it equally. So some people would be extracting more from others. And then when you consider that negative healthcare realities are often caused by people's own actions, is it then that in a public healthcare system, you're rewarding bad behavior and punishing the good behaved? Like, we have to think about it. And as I said, whenever you're thinking about this, don't think of the public as being free and the private as being a cost. Both have a cost. It's just one, we're all paying the cost in nebulous ways that are difficult to tell. And the other, the cost is much more direct. But both have a cost. And if we break down the cost as in cost per patient, in good night Australian, if we break down the cost as in cost per patient in a public healthcare system, what would be the cost per patient versus in a private healthcare system? And is it then in the public healthcare system that we use resources actually more inefficiently in the long run? Michelle says, you're assuming that persons who seek healthcare are bad behaved. Elderly, genetic issues, mental. No, Michelle, I am not assuming that. That's not what I am assuming. I am making a common sense, obvious conclusion. Yes, elderly people would access healthcare more. Yes, people with genetic issues would access healthcare more. Yes, people with mental issues would access healthcare more. But let's not act like we don't. Wait, Michelle, I am going to address that. Let's not act like we don't know what the statistics are. The vast majority of diseases, of deaths and hospitalizations, Caribbean-wide, are from non-communicable lifestyle diseases. Lifestyle diseases. And in general, if we were to go through the country, the people who eat worse, who treat their body worse, would they end up in the hospital generally more? The answer is yes. There's no technicality to, but maybe they're old and no. When we calculate everything, among the elderly, among the pensioners, who are the people who would most likely access the healthcare system? The people who are the most unhealthy and generally live the least healthy lifestyle. Among the middle-aged, it's the same. Among those who are mentally incapacitated, it's the same. Among those who have genetic issues, it's the same. In nearly every group, the people, by and large, who treat their body the worst would get the most negative healthcare consequences. Michelle, why are you trying to be a sophist on this, right? Why are you trying to argue the technicalities round the corners here? Are you, as a medical worker in Trinidad and Tobago, where our public health care, our public minister of health is attempting to do all kind of stuff to try to get the country healthier? Around the Caribbean, where they are complaining about our diet habits, are you really attempting to see that people who eat and treat their body worse aren't the ones that are more likely to end up in the healthcare system? Like, I think that's a kind of obvious conclusion. That's a kind of obvious conclusion to me. So the reality of the public healthcare system is you end up in long run. You could, okay, but sorry, Ronnie, I didn't notice. I didn't see the request though. The request didn't come up. But yeah, I take your observation as a healthcare worker, but I take the Caribbean-wide statistics and the statistics released by the hospitals and the statistics released by our ministry every year. I'll take those statistics above just the observations, as much as I do take your observation into consideration. The statistics that say non-communicable lifestyle diseases are the leading cause of death and hospitalization in the Caribbean. I mean, that's just that. Even things like cancer, some things that could seem like there may be genetic or some other factor, even things like that are often linked to lifestyle choices. At least they're not telling you drink bush tea and go home and rest. Yeah. Hey, yesterday at the start when we were talking about some of the LGBTQIA2+ issues, I remember someone in the chat was asking, why does it matter? Why does it matter to anyone? I was watching a video today on YouTube, and a guy went on, one of those street interview things, and he went to a college campus, and then he went to the ghetto, to the hood. And he was interviewing people in those two communities and asking them, would you date a transgender person? And the answers were so predictable. The most educated people in the society all said, yes, of course I would. Have you ever? No, I haven't, but I have no problem with it. Of course I would. While the people in the hood were like, nah, bro, nah, I'm not doing that, obviously. And this is why I think these issues matter. Because when issues like this get into education, and we begin inculcating in education an ideology where all of these educated people now would willingly lie on camera just because they know that's the acceptable ideology in higher education. These are the dangers that we have with things like this to me. Like the lady that said, what does it matter? The lady that said that yesterday in the chat, it just stuck with me. Educated people, not only they lie, but they are convinced of nonsense easier. That's actually truth. In order to convince some people of the most insane things, they have to be a certain level of smart. I remember they were talking about this during the pandemic when they were trying to establish conspiracy theories and stuff. They were showing that oftentimes conspiracies are believed mostly by the least educated and by the most educated. It's the people generally in the middle that often aren't the ones to go ahead with it. And so what you get put into the education system, and this is so important for Trinidad and Tobago. As I was saying earlier when we were talking about the public service, our government is in control of children from birth and even into the job world. So if within that the government decides to implant some kind of ideology, whatever that ideology is, you nearly have no chance with your own children. And that's why these things are important. And ideologies aren't all just neutral. Of course it is part of a larger agenda, Michelle. Ideologies aren't just neutral. They work towards an end. And the thing is, some people who are involved in ideologies may not even know what the end may be. Like some of those cults, like Jim Jones, who went down into Guyana and poisoned everyone and then killed the rest. When he was building that insane ideology to carry the people out into the jungle, maybe he didn't even know he was going to ultimately kill everybody. I was reading about there was a cult in the 90s in the US where they all drank, was it Lace Sprite or some kind of madness like that, and they were supposed to go meet a spaceship that was passing by Earth, and so they all offed themselves. Like, insane things. Rooney, I saw Hotep's request. I didn't see yours. I sent an invite. I don't have a problem. I didn't have a problem until I saw a random video from US preschool show teaching kids about LGBT. I don't want that exposed to my kids, and is my choice keeping it out of general content. And to me, education generally is supposed to be about the academic subjects by and large. I think familial issues, moral issues should be left to families. But the thing is, and this is what the SDMS in Trinidad and Tobago is currently complaining about, where the government is actually trying to where the government is actually trying to remove some of the religious institutions from being able to control schools as much. And that's dangerous. Because to me, the sphere of morality belongs in the religious sphere. It's a religious thing. Government, states, you cannot legislate that. That's not in their job spec. That's within the job spec of religion. But when you remove religion totally, like much of the Western world has done, there's no religion, there's no God, there's nothing, then the realm of morality is by default left up to the state. By default. To me, I think that never works. I don't think that works. Because the realm of morality, for one, and I'm just talking on an objective level here. I'm not even talking whether you believe in God or not. I'm talking objective reality here. The realm of morality needs stability. The realm of morality needs stability. You need, for you to have morals, you need something to be moral across a pretty lengthy span of time. Morality needs to stay stable. By very nature, things in a political realm don't stay stable. They're dependent upon the whims of people, of the masses. Even if it's democratic, it's on the whims of the masses. So by nature, you'd never have stability. That's why countries that are removed from the moorings of that religious moral code and are attempting to do it by the state moral code, they're noticing that their moral code is moving at a speed that is confusing everyone. No one knows where the moral code should actually be. Okay, we have now lifted up the moral anchor. The moral anchor for the United States was rooted in Judeo-Christianity. They lifted it up out of that. Okay, now where do you put it down? Or do you put it down? Because there's a theory right now, an academic theory, queer theory, and listen, this is real. I am not just talking nonsense here. You could go research queer theory. There's an academic theory that basically says there should not be a moral anchor. We should constantly push the bounds of what is morally acceptable. And listen, I don't know if you all could think far enough, but that leads down some dark roads.
Hello.
Do as thou wilt shall be the entirety of the law, Michelle. I suppose you know where that comes from.
I did realize words. Again,
Yeah.
but what I was getting to was the I know I was holding her last one. Anyway, yeah. What I was covering up about was the public service thing and about paying taxes and stuff, right? So I'm going back to that for
No
just
problem.
a second. And what I was going, as you bring up this queer thing, and it just makes me think about America, right? And you know, in America they have this drive for repatriations and whatever. Repatriation.
Repatriation.
Right.
Are you talking repatriation or reparations?
Oh my gosh, yes, reparation. I don't know where I get that from. What am I thinking?
Repatriation.
Yes,
No, repatriation is something, innit? Repatriation is going back to the motherland. Going back to Africa, nah.
Yeah. Actually, I have a friend who was talking to me about that the other day. Probably that's all in my
They
mind.
could go on their own. My motherland is Trinidad.
Coming up, right? They have this reparation stuff coming up, right? And it's like, okay, and this is where the public service link comes in, right? Please, because money is not just created, money is taken from somewhere and given to somewhere else. So just like the public service, where we have workers who do the bare minimum, if they do any minimum at all. I'm not saying every public servant. I know it's a public servant who does be bending over backwards, and they are not the ones that get promoted. We all know it, right? Because you want to just come, knock the coffee glass with the supervisor, and shush about everybody in the office for 2 hours lunch. And
This person speaks as if they are employed in the public service.
No. This is the thing. Listen,
First-hand experience.
It have no room for that for me personally, right? But I have been around the place and I have seen it. I've seen phones ring and nobody answer. I've seen persons. Listen, when we could reach a place where an elderly person, like where I used to work, I used to have a lot of retired people coming. I mean, I have retired people coming, and the person who only does they either not there, they never there, or they just like they're not useful to the person. It's like so sad to see, because these fellas and them is I used to work with, so it was mainly be men, right? They used to be so old and frail, and it used to be like, way boy, and nobody could ever do anything to really help them, right?
Ronnie, you will finish there, but that's why no public servant could gaslight me and tell me like the public service is actually really hardworking people that are misunderstood. Listen, I grew up going into the public service. Every day I was home from school, I went to work with my mother. I grew up walking around the desk and seeing everybody play solitaire and free cell. That was those days. And they did this. Take the phone, rest it there. Solitaire. Go out, and there are people who would come to get... There was a guy came from South to get something done in the office. And they told him, because one of them didn't want to do it at the moment, they told him, come back tomorrow now. He has to go south and come back in the morning. Just for that. Just because I don't feel to do it. So nobody could gaslight me about the public service. Go ahead, Rooney.
Yeah. And when I asked to move into the section because I was already whenever people would come, when the girl was not there, because she had a child, so she used to come in late and leave early because she had to drop the child to school and take the child from school and da. So I asked to move over to the section, and they never put me in the section. They moved me and they never put me in the section because I don't know, they keep saying, well, you're not the correct range and whatever. That was when I was in China. I leave all that because I couldn't understand that. It didn't make sense. Every time I would ask to move to somewhere that I feel like I could help, I was never put in the position. And the thing is, I always used to go, right? I still used to go, on my lunch break. I used to go in these sections and work in them because I was dumb. I was dumb.
Rooney,
no,
you sounding like you could have a conversation with my mother, because that was my mother's problem. She said she goes to work wanting to work. She don't want to lime on work. If she want to lime, she will come home. So she go on to work. She want to lime. She want to work. And if she works, people get upset with you if you do jobs that don't pertain to you. Because if you do more than you're supposed to do, you're going to start to show somebody else up. So it's a regular thing. Regular.
It is unfortunate, and I will always bring up that now in this day and age, everybody talking about, oh well, look at how much years we get a raise of pay and whatever, and the productivity is still at naught, right? And I will always bring the example. I do work for a bakery, right? And I don't make that much money, but it had a point in time that the money really wasn't working for me. And I went to the person and I said, here's what, I need an increase, right? And the increase was a significant amount. in terms of percent wise, and the person paid me it, no fuss. And the reason for that is they hire me to bake. But when I done bake, I wash all the wares, I sweep, I mop, I put out all the stove and everything. Good. So when I come, they don't have to hire a cleaner. They don't have to fuss, and they don't have to come out and ensure anything is done. They know that I am hired to bake, but they know they're getting more from me.
And
so
Ronnie,
I can ask for an increase at any point in time, and I will get it.
Personally, I kinda that's why I'm not knocking anyone for their choice, but that's why I don't think I could go in the public service, at least not as just that regular generic clerk 1, clerk 2, whatever it is. No offense if you are, no offense, but personally I want to be able to do more and get more. You're trying to tell me my salary is X, and even if I could do more, even if I see more, even if I have an innovative idea and I put it out there, even if I increase efficiency in a department or something, no matter what I do, my salary is just X. And when you get promoted, it's just based on time. When the time passes enough, you might get a little promotion. It has nothing to do with how well I do my job. It's just, well, Jenny was here since 1950, so she next in the promotion line. And so it is go, eh? That job sounds too frustrating for me.
Alright, if I've learned how to pay to do better, why should you? Why not just skate by like everybody else? Because you win and do more, and you're not going to get paid more. So, just do the bare minimum now, gosh. It's spoiling it.
You see that, Rooney? The incentive structure of the public service is to not work. That's the problem. And that's why when Michelle was asking way back why people have a problem with the public service, that's why. The incentive structure of the public service is to not work. And then you realize that we pay for this. And okay, you could explain that there are managerial issues and historical issues and colonial issues and da. Okay, but at the end of the day, at the moment, what we have is a massive leech on the country's economy that is incentivized to not work. You see the reasoning, and this sounds like just a random thing out of nowhere, but it isn't. That kind of reasoning things out reminds me sometimes, as you were talking about the reparations talk and stuff, how some black communities talk about when people highlight the fact that urban youths are overrepresented in the violent crime. And you explain about the history, and what you have to understand is the jobs and the unemployment in these communities, and and maybe all of that might be true. But at the end of the day, to the residents in El Socorro, all they could see is urban youths are pests to me. You have to try and solve the urban youth pest problem before you try to explain to people all of the other situations and surrounding circumstances that influence this. It doesn't work for the victims of the situation. And at the present moment, the people of the country, the citizens of the country could actually feel like victims of the public service to some extent. And I saw Curvan, you asking about the reparations, if the Africans who enslaved people are going to pay reparations. To listen. When I listen to that reparations conversation, you recognize the reparations conversation is extremely American-centric. When most of those people talk about reparations, they're talking about reparations living in the education bubble of the United States, thinking that white people are rulers everywhere with the same percentages of white to black people in every country, everywhere in the world. No, it's ridiculous. Who, as you ask, who pays the reparations? Well, what would actually happen is the tax money would be used to pay the reparations. So what would be the the actual result of that is in the United States, where in many areas wealthy groups are minorities, like the Indians and the Asians, etc. And the wealthier you are, generally speaking, you do pay the majority of the taxes. What may end up happening is Indian and Chinese immigrants who came over and was successful because of hard work over generations may be the majority of the payers of the reparations. And the reality is that kind of cash reparations that they're talking about would not repair a thing. All that is going to do is end up in the pockets of the consumer models as quick as lickety split. Yeah.
That's true. That's why I don't really do the reparations talk with Black America too much. Although I'm not really against reparations, it is sort of the concept of how they're trying to. But Nathan, would you say that whole public service kind of thing? Would you say that's a kind of socialist style?
Yeah.
Kind of thing where can't work past here, can't do a time and a half, can't do a overtime. Because here's the thing, right? There was this cafe in Canada that shut down. It was an anti-capitalist cafe.
Yes.
My boy who was running it was like, if you could pay today, you pay today. But you don't have to pay today. You can pay anytime you feel like paying, and obviously shut down because it's a business. Business don't run on that sort of communism type behavior. So what I'm really understanding from this whole public service thing is that it's really socialist. Like, don't do more than your fair share, because that's how socialist style governments and socialist style things kind of operate. Like, the Soviet Union and Russia was big on that. And I mean, that's kind of what crumbled down the whole thing, including my boy Stalin, of course. But that's what kind of make the whole industry of the Soviet Union kind of crumble. People was like, listen, me ain't got do all that work. And they ain't got to innovate and all that kind of good stuff. And I kind of understand why America pushes back hard on communism and socialism, because that is detrimental to that progressive society.
Yeah. The incentive structure of communism always causes that. The general idea of communism is from him according to his ability to him according to his need. That is the kind of slogan thing. And you see, the whole idea of communism is that the human being is supposed to transcend into the, oh gosh, I forgot the German word for it. There's a German word for it, which is as it were, the elevated man, which is the communist man, who is able to live in a communist society. But no, it's not possible. Human nature is human nature. Human nature is not fungible like that. We can't force it to change. So people, and I say this nearly every live, people work based on incentives, not based on what is said. So when your incentive is that if I work plenty, you take from me more. And if I work little, you give to me more. So everyone is supposed to get the same. All of us are supposed to get this. Like, think about a farm like this. You have a farm, and I like farm because food to eat from work kind of, it takes away the money confusion so easily. So you have a farm and you hire workers, and you tell the workers, regardless of how hard you work, at the end of the 6 months growing period, I'm paying you in corn, and everyone gets 5 bags of corn regardless of how hard you work. What do you think most of the workers are going to do? And the thing with this is, even if you have a good worker who decides, well, you know what, I'm still going to work and see. I'm still going to work and see and do this. I came here to work, let me work. What the worker would eventually realize is that, okay, I am no longer just working for my 5 bags of corn. Because if the rest of workers, so there are 5 workers, and one worker decides I'm going to continue working diligently, what eventually happens is this one worker might bring up only 15 corn. And now this 15 corn has to split up between all 5 of the other people. So your work, the more you work, the less you earn from it. and the more louses around you earn from it. So the incentive structure is that you don't. And what usually happens in communist countries, it's not just that the lazy people get lazy, but the people who want to do things, they leave. They leave. Then we change the payment structure of the PS, which I agree with, tied to public satisfaction surveys. That's such a hard thing to do. That's such a hard thing to do. It's extremely difficult.
But
go ahead.
The thing is, yeah, because the thing is for me, when I kind of always juxtapose America in this thing, because yeah, I tell Americans, listen, yeah, we have free healthcare, and I'm saying yes, we could get to boast about free healthcare and free education, but I'm like, listen, it ain't really that great if it's free healthcare and people had to stand up outside to wait on a bed. Like, I am all for sort of privatizing certain things, right? Like privatize the healthcare, make it better, make it. I mean, insurance is good. Like Americans have insurance, and Americans benefit from the insurance plans, and they still get to have good healthcare. Yes, crutches in America might be too much money for a man to buy, but it's like, be for real, you know what I'm saying? Like, would Trinidad and Tobago not benefit from a more privatized education system, a more privatized healthcare system? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know.
Here's what I'll say: education for sure. Privatize healthcare. As much as I am a proponent of free market in Trinidad and Tobago, if you were to flip that switch, I agree with what Michelle was saying. People would die. People would die because we aren't set up like that at the moment. But I do think, like, what we're doing right now in Trinidad and Tobago, you're seeing some of that kind of some of that problem is as it was solving itself. The demand is there, so the private institutions are coming in. They're coming in. And as more private institutions come in, I think more healthcare insurance providers would become a more regular thing, because there are actually quite a few people in Trinidad with health insurance. There are some people. So it would become a more prevalent thing. And then I think when the private market seems like it could sustain that, because we just got a private NICU a month ago, the first private NICU, so our private healthcare system isn't yet at that level, but it's growing. So maybe as it grows, we could see to offload some of the load on that. And who knows, the idea that I can't remember which incarnation of the planet was in the United States, and just bear in mind, in the United States all of the healthcare isn't paid. You can get emergency care for free. Don't take that chain up. But I do believe that we could have some kind of possibility where the government has a basic level of insurance that they cover for people. I may not have a problem with that. Because as a country, I am a free market guy, but I do understand why some social policies are beneficial. We live together as a society for some benefit. And as a society, I don't necessarily have a problem with paying some money to catch some of the people who fall through the cracks in society. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem if we have so much of a net that people no longer fall through the cracks, but people start breaking off pieces of society to just jump in and land on the net. That's where my problem.
No, well, that's the thing, Nathan, because when Roosevelt implemented the welfare state, we literally saw what the welfare state did to America for quite some time, right? The social safety nets in America gets it's wide, it's ever encompassing, and it lets people sort of rock back in a lazy boy chair and sort of like, get fat. And that's kind of my problem for me. I'm not really against, emergency social programs for people. Like, no, I'm not against that per se, of course, but I'm really against the whole notion of having safety nets that encompass everybody for a long span of time. I think that kind of hampers growth, to me at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good night, positive. RL says free market is unregulated, which comes with problems. That is not actually true. The free market is regulated by the market. The market is the regulation of the free market. If and this is an excuse that people regularly make, that if you don't regulate the market, then people would poison people and stuff like that, but that's not actually true. When you look at unregulated markets, the weed market is unregulated. And how often do you hear smokers saying that they go by their pusher and he give them poison, he give them cyanide inside of the 25 piece or how much ever? It doesn't happen because he would lose his customers. That is the regulation of the market. The alcohol in the United States, when they outlawed it over that period, and people were talking about it, the regulations and stuff. The what they call moonshine alcohol. No one purposefully poisoned anyone with moonshine. It was just people who are unable to do the scientific experiment. And they lost customers. The free market is the regulator. Now, bear in mind, RL, that regulators, even if you get official regulators, that doesn't ensure that the products would be of a certain quality. The FDA recalls lots of things per year, and everything that the FDA recalls, the FDA passes. So keep that in mind, and they're regulators. So the free market does regulate.
Good night, Nathan. I want to jump in.
Good night, positive.
So I've been listening to the conversation, and I came in a little bit late, but it appears that we're discussing privatization and leaving certain things public.
Mm-hmm.
I am one in support of privatization of a lot of things in the country. I think privatization push productivity, and government policy is why I think would stop. Please do not refer to me as such an individual. I feel very disrespected by the use of such term in relation to me and my voice. I felt grossly disrespected by such a statement, but I would not be distracted. I would remain focused. Yes. So what I'm saying is, I think I'm fully in favor of privatization because it pushes productivity and it changes. You feel like I want to accomplish something. However, we saw the depletion of the unions and the denigration of the unions over a number of years. This is where the unions could have been a little more reasonable. So the unions and the labor laws and the government create policies as the safeguard for employees. So like we had the minimum wage could have been set at whatever rate according to the particular field or the industries or wherever. However, you as a private sector businessman, you don't want to put something viable on the table to attract and keep your employees. We should have that kind of competition happening because I think competition usually breeds better development. When TSTT monopolized the cell phone market, you were paying $600 and $700 and $800 for a Me Too. As Digicel entered the market, we saw a drastic drop in TSTT prices. So sometimes that level of competition works for us, the consumer.
Correct. Michelle, you'll jump in right after RL. Bear in mind, I'm not arguing that I don't think there should be regulation, but I'm giving the counterpoints to that. You're saying that, well, you see with regulation also, you bear some legal responsibility for your product or services. For example, if you are regulated, you need to have your things insured, licensed, and quality control. It means you risk losing something if you don't do your work properly. First of all, in the free market, as I was saying, the market regulates it, and you will lose something either way if your product isn't up to scratch. Either way, you lose something in the free market. So that is a cost by itself. And what that does oftentimes is when you put those legal barriers there, what you often do is make a certain height is required. I forgot the technical term for it. A certain height is required to clear before you could start businesses now, and it makes it difficult for lower classes of people. So when you put more of those regulations in, very often you see more of the mom and pop shop, as they call it. They close down, and more of the large barriers to entry. Thank you, Curvon. You put up more barriers to entry, and more of those larger corporations and conglomerates start to take the space. So if I need to have $50,000 in different equipment before I could open my restaurant, then only someone who could get an access to 50,000 and more as a startup would be able to open restaurants. And that's why very often we see in regulations, large companies are sometimes the biggest pushers of these regulations. So minimum wage, many times large companies push minimum wage because they know they could take that buffer for a little while. They know they could take a little hit for a little while. Many times the regulations and inspections and qualifications, the large companies have no problem with it. So we saw this problem with the scrap iron industry. When the scrap iron dealers were complaining, they were saying, look out, they're cutting our industry now. They're saying they're trying to regularize it and regulate it. But let's look and see if when it comes out now, if the requirements are going to be so onerous that it's only going to be the largest companies that could do it. There was this accusation when they decriminalized cannabis in Trinidad too. You looked and you saw that the former Attorney General, allegedly, a family member of his, allegedly already had a cannabis company registered. So if you have someone in the Attorney General's office with a company and then you're asking the Attorney General's office to create regulations for this industry, you understand that very likely what you're going to do is cut out the small man and only allow the big man. Yeah, Michelle Sudan, I saw you there. Just not positive. I saw Michelle there a while and we wanted to talk since earlier. So jump in, Michelle. What's that? What's going on?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. What's going on?
How are you?
I'm well. And you?
You well? I'm alright. Just like I said, I was kind of just rolling past and I do public service and I was like, this is interesting. Let me just take a listen. And I'm tired after a long day. I just kind of wanted to address, I know the guy before was mentioning about social welfare state, right? What actually we follow the English social welfare format. And actually, social welfare was not meant to be the way we have it. It was meant to be so uncomfortable that persons were forced. It was just supposed to be temporary, but uncomfortable, that people were forced to be innovative and get out there and do different things. And we do have a lot of programs. You could go on the ministry's website.
I know that.
And you will see a lot of programs that persons can take advantage of. But also, as you were speaking about just now, with regularization of certain industries, if we put too much regularization, now I agree with public-private partnerships. I think the public service could probably do with that because we would benefit as well as public servants. We would actually get equipment to work with and not have one bathroom for an entire floor of workers, right?
Yeah.
So, we would benefit also. But we have to be careful about how we do it because the way we structured our social welfare was unfortunately used as a political tool to get grassroots people to vote. It's being used and continues to be used as something to bring votes, which is not what it was meant to be for. And now we created a dependency syndrome where people now are expecting. This is why we get upset when certain grants are not increased. Right? When a budget comes along.
But Michelle, as a social worker, if you don't mind me asking this, how do you deal with that though? How do the professionals maneuver through this where you know what professionally is needed here? You might have an idea what this person might need to get out of the situation. But the people who give your orders, who control the management, who control the policy, their aim is to keep this person as part of my drone class. How do you maneuver that? Because you're the social worker that's supposed to go out there and help them, but also the government wants to use your branch to keep them in that dependency syndrome. How is that worked out from your end?
I don't believe the government is using the public service to keep people within that system. I think it's an external thing where when elections kind of come around, you kind of get a ramp up there. But ideally, what we do as social workers, I can only speak for what my department and social workers I know would do. And majority, I believe, we want to see people independent because factually people really cannot live on barely live anyway on the social grants. So the grants are temporary. We guide them accordingly, and we also empower them by showing them that they have skills. We help them flesh out, okay, what skills do you have? What can we do? Can you go back to school? And we put them in positions where they can bring themselves and bring up their families. That's what we do. Also, we provide, like I said, counseling and stuff for patients and clients who really have a hard time mentally. But we also see the flip side. For example, when they are not out of that situation and their TT cards get cut, and now they're like stressing out, and we feel helpless because there's nothing we can do aside from hampers, and we go beg. I say social workers are professional beggars, unfortunately. And we go to private sometimes, or even from our own pockets, and we try to do hampers and do all kinds of things to help out because, we also fall within a system that's flawed. And we try our best to bridge the gaps.
Though, when I speak about the free market, I am fully understanding that a lot of the jobs, to get sexist here, a lot of the jobs that women choose are very difficult to monetize. How do you get a free market monetization on something like social work? That's just impossible.
Yeah.
That has always been the problem. So, like, when people talk about the wage gap and stuff, that's part of the issue. That women generally have a flavor and a lean for jobs that are more difficult to monetize because usually they're human-related jobs, and human-related jobs are very difficult to scale. Money is made by and large. If you want to get rich, if you want to get very wealthy, you find a job that you could scale. Something you could do that could scale. Going and sell roti could scale. You understand? You could sell one roti, or you could sell 1 million rotis, and you could kind of scale it up and sell more and more and more. But social work, you could only be a shoulder to cry on for maximum 2 people. You have 2 shoulders. Max. And chances are, if those 2 people needed your shoulder to cry on, they don't have any money to pay you anyway. So it's somehow we have to figure out the social agreement enough to understand that the importance of social work is as such that even on the selfish side, if we leave people to just go as they are in society, we lose out. Those people eventually come back and harm the law-abiding citizens. We lose out too, so there's a social benefit to it. But to try and figure out exactly how much that social benefit is worth, that's a difficult thing. I understand that. It is.
I have a question. My question is, as a social worker, somebody into social work, how do you determine when somebody is in need or the individual is just dependent or abusive to the social works, to the social support systems?
Well, that's part of our training, right? Part of what social workers train, we do a lot of psychology, and we do have social assessment tools, field visits, so we make proper financial, social assessments of clients. We won't recommend somebody for social welfare if we believe that they are abusing the system. All right, for me personally, we can help. I
like to be a little controversial. So my question is now, this is why when politicians make certain recommendations or have 1,000,001 food cards in their back pockets, it tends to create a problem. Because I know of an individual who was saying, allow social workers to do their work and make those decisions.
Right. So let me just clarify something, because I realize a lot of people tend to get mixed up. Social workers and social welfare officers are two completely different people. Persons who work in welfare offices or social welfare officers. Social workers actually work well to help us. For example, we work in the health centers, the hospitals, and so we work in the community as well, right? So we provide psychosocial support to persons who are having challenges, and we make recommendations. Now, a lot of social workers, unfortunately, do not get a seat at the table.
But how does that make sense? To me, the social worker for this person should be the point person with a seat at the table.
Exactly, because we are on the ground and we look at both sides. We can see the financial, we know the economic, the social issues that that affect persons. That's what we're trained to do. Unfortunately, it's money is the bottom line. Finances are the bottom line. And if this, and you realize whenever there's budgetary cuts, the social programs are the first to go because they are not deemed as important. We'll just push it to the back, and we'll just deal with the issues later. But then that's why we have a rising crime rate, families falling apart because they don't avail themselves of any of these psychosocial support services, and money is not being poured into those areas, and we're reaping the benefits. We're reaping the seeds of the fruits, of those seeds we planted.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying there, positive radiation. Obviously, social work and social welfare should be joined. That seems pretty obvious to me. Like, in communities, something I notice, if you belong to a church or religious group in a community, sometimes you see some people from outside the community coming to help inside the community. And you realize that many times they don't know how to help, because if you live in a community and you do social work, I'm not talking like a professional badge, but if you're in any kind of organization that does social work in a community, you often know specifics about people in a community. So you know that this guy doesn't need food. He isn't short for food. You see him looking skinny, but he lives with his sister and she cooks meals every day. He decides to go and smoke drugs. He doesn't need any food. Food isn't his problem. He needs a rehab. Or this person is a kleptomaniac. That's why they put out of their house right now. You might know some of these things. And to me, to have benefits linked in any kind of way to people without having close social knowledge of their situation just doesn't make sense, because what people need very often is widely different. Roni, what was the question? And on the note of Michelle Sudan's voice and disposition, well, I would hope that our social workers are polite and have voices that are suitable for such. We can't we can't have only rowdy voiced social workers out there. Go ahead, Roni.
That would be terrible. I'll be sad. I'll be depressed just listening to it.
So any of you all need a food card?
That's not ask the question now. Hi, Michelle. So, my question is this, right? A few years ago, I would have thought some, not counseling or whatever, but I went and speak to some therapist people and them in the people hospital. And, they gave you date to come back and whatever. And I never went back, right? After the third time, I never went back, right? Because I was like possibly trying to give me medication. Right? And I never went back and they never called me. Like, they never even check up on me. Like, I gotta be dead. And they never, like, this is like probably 3 years down the road, and they never call me back. They never call to find out why I missed my appointment. They never call to find out if I'm coming back, if I'm doing better. Is that like regular practice, or is it like, like we so busy, we don't have time to call patients who missed the appointment?
Well, first let me apologize. That should not have been the norm. We usually check in with our clients. I know the department I work with, we take those things very seriously. Most departments for social workers, I can tell you that. However, and not to definitely diminish, your experience. What's happening though is that the reality on the ground is, I'll give you an example. We have about 5 or 6 social workers in my department and 3 phones. And that's to take calls, and that's to try and keep up with, case files. And so unfortunately, very unfortunately, people do sometimes slip through the cracks. And as best as we try, we really do try, it happens. I just we don't even have internet hookup. You know, the government service in Portugal is not very, electronically database.
But I thought we have a Ministry of Digital Transformation, Michelle.
What are you transforming? Asking this question.
We getting there. We getting there. It's slow, but we getting there.
But what the ministry, how long this ministry in existence? How long does it take to digitally transform?
Unfortunately, that seems to be one of our biggest issues, funds. But why, I don't know. That'll be for people more knowledgeable than me to answer. But I can only tell you from what I experienced on the ground in terms of that. I'm really sorry, Ronnie, and you shouldn't let that deter you. You know, like I said, sometimes things slip through the cracks. But, you can take charge and advocate for yourself. And, speak to your doctor. And,
To tell you the honest truth, by about 6 months down the road, I was feeling so shame. I was like, I'm not even going to go back there because I feeling real bad. Like, they probably thinking, this girl just lying.
No, they can't think that.
I was like, huh? I don't know why I felt. I was like, really, but if I go back there now, they might be like, sign up.
If you ever get that experience in terms of someone, you get that kind of energy that you feel judged, ask to pick a different worker. Speak to somebody else.
Nobody do no. It's me.
Well, you're in charge of yourself too, eh? You had to advocate and be responsible for your own healthcare as
well. That is so true about so many different things. You fight in a battle there, and you regularly talk to people about, and in teaching I see this sometimes, where a student sitting in the class went through a whole tough nightmare battle and nobody else knows. They went through that battle all in their head. I ask this question, and then this girl go and think I dumb, and then she go and tell that one that I dumb, and everybody will think I stupid. And they think through the whole thing that never actually happened. You're fighting a battle in your own head for that.
Yeah, but I have found that for me personally, when I started doing my own thing and being more productive, I've felt a lot better. So I think a lot of people, they have no purpose in life.
All right.
So they get depressed easily.
I think a lot of people with depression, and I know Michelle being a social worker, there are some social workers that, they are a lot on the psychology, medical side of it. But I have realized from reading, from living, many people are not depressed in a diagnostic way. They are living depressing lives. If you don't talk to your immediate family, you have no loved ones that you lean on, you don't have a future family that you're looking for, you're just an atomized individual consumer walking around the world with no connections. Humans weren't meant to live like this. We weren't meant to live like that. You're living a depressing life that humans weren't meant to live. It's like when you take the orcas, the killer whales, and you put them in SeaWorld or Atlantis or wherever they put them, and their fins curve and stuff. Of course the orca is depressed because he's living a depressing life. And some of us, we're not living in the ocean as killer whales, as it were. We are outside of our natural realm, and then we're shocked that we're depressed. Of course you're depressed. Your life is depressing. And what you need to do sometimes isn't get any medication, but fix the depressing parts of your life.
Question here again. I am now concerned or thinking in the lines of the mental space for the social worker themselves. What are the support systems we have in place for the social workers, let's say the mediators or the mentors and so on that the states employ? Because they experience and listen to some very gruesome stories.
Yes, they do.
They hear some kind of things I wouldn't dream to hear. I just happen to be in some of these types of sessions with quote-unquote at-risk young men. And when I hear some of the things them guys will see and them talking like it's normal, yeah, I guess 6 bullets in my shoulder, but that normal. how as a mother you sit and you hear any young men speak like that, or sometimes you see your own son or your own family members, what systems they have in place to create that comfort for the social worker themselves.
Nathan, I took over your chat.
No, this is good. This is great. This is great.
In terms of social workers, we have each other. we speak to each other, we vent to each other, we have our managers or supervisors provide support, and if it's something that is a bit more challenging that we can't really cope with or deal with, we also seek help because we are aware of the benefits of seeking help ourselves. So, for me personally, after a while, I don't mean to sound crude about it, but it's almost like you get a kind of accustomed being in it for a while. And I don't think there's anything anybody could say to kind of shock me anymore.
I understand what you're saying.
You might be surprised.
I understand what you're saying. It's a job. It is a job after a while where I know someone close to me who works on the police side of that. The Children's Authority with the police there. Children's Protective Unit, I think there. And those
Protection,
that you hear even a shake off of some of those stories and your paws raise, because those are stories that don't make it to the papers, that don't make it to national news oftentimes. And when you hear sometimes how regular some of these things happen, it gives you some perspective on the kind of monsters that you're living amongst there. And to me, but even them, even the person there, he said it after a while, it kind of, and to me, what you might need help for is probably to reposition your emotional side, because I don't think we're supposed to be numb to this. You're not supposed to be.
It's not a matter. It's for social. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathy does not do a human services worker good, because that's when you'll find yourself unable to get up in the morning and feel like you take on the stress, you take on the emotions and the pain of these people. Empathy means I can understand where you come from, I can relate. However, I'm not going to take that personally. It's not happening to me. Therefore, I am able to help you. Otherwise, two of you will be sitting on crying and nobody gonna get help.
Yeah.
Right? So that's I think that the social work, it's your job to know how to cope and deal with those stuff.
Correct.
We do know, right? But we are human as well.
Right.
And we do have cases. I remember I had a client on the ward once, and I had to take a long walk. I walked all the way down to town, bought myself a coffee, drink it, and come all the way back up to Portisville Hospital because it shook me a bit, and then we just breathe, regroup, and we go again.
Well, what you did there was what you are saying. What you are saying now. What you said before. You have you're supposed to have the experience and knowledge to know what you're supposed to do in a situation like that. Okay, I know that it doesn't make sense. I stand here and try and soak in any more of this and break down. At this point, let me just go take a long walk, breathe, drink some coffee, let that caffeine hit my system, sizzle a bit, and then I'm right back at it. You know what to do for it. It's
let that coffee now I took I could.
What?
But Nathan, I think you just technically addressed something that you shared earlier in terms of a lot of these social working jobs, they tend to see a lot more females in them.
Yeah.
Because I am now thinking as a young male, if I hear some of them stories, I could understand why somebody could be arrested and die after sitting on a chair or fall off a chair and die. Because the first thing, the masculine protective mode in us is naturally going to kick in if you're not trained to control it in these scenarios. Yeah. We could lose the sense of reasoning very quick because the first thing you think that is my son or my daughter and me and going through that.
You're right.
And
you're right.
Watch me, that could click in the wrong place and it could really do a man different.
I think positive. Like if I were the supreme leader and my backward traditional views and gender roles were to be allowed to take hold over the land, I may have a rule for social workers to be women predominantly, if not only, because as Michelle was talking about there, where they have each other, that's something that women will say. I'm saying that in quotation marks, quoted. That's something that generally women would say. If you have a group of male social workers and you ask them how you all manage with that, I highly doubt they would say the words that we have each other. And it sounds mocking. It could sound mocking, but that's kind of what you need. And women are, to some extent, better at handling emotional extremes like that. That's why, although women feel negative emotions more, although women experience higher levels of depression, anxiety, etc., 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 women don't go to the extreme end as much as men, not even close, generally speaking. So maybe that might actually make sense, that social work be something. And as Michelle was speaking about with empathy is one of the traits that psychologically women, the females generally, have quite a bit more than men. They're better at that, being more empathetic, and it's needed in that field. It is. Who knows? Maybe if I was the sexist supreme leader.
Well, actually,
What's that, Michelle?
No, what I was saying is we're actually trying to encourage more guys, believe it or not, to come into the field. Anybody looking to become a social worker and think they have what it takes, please do and come into the field. We are looking for guys. You guys are a rare commodity. Reason being, men do also bring a perspective that is welcome. All right, it helps to offset, give us a different look into things. That's why we talk to each other a lot about our cases. Everybody can have a different view. So it gives us a more holistic viewpoint. And sometimes men prefer to talk to men, and health issues especially. There may be domestic issues they're just not comfortable speaking to a woman about. And that's probably one of the reasons why men don't generally seek counseling, because it may be hard to talk to a woman if he is experiencing domestic violence and things like that.
To be honest with you, Michelle, I don't know the statistics. I am just talking as a man here. I feel if my wife was beating me, that's very funny if you know who my wife, and the comparison between my wife and I, how we look. But if my wife was beating me, I would have been more comfortable telling that to a woman. I'm just telling you. I am not going and sit in front of any other man, watch him eye to eye and say, yeah, but she beats me. And I understand, I know this is a serious matter and we're making light of it, and yes. But seriously, I think, generally speaking, men, even in emotional issues, may rather speak to women. Men relate to men in a different way. So a man would talk to a man about that, but I wouldn't sit down in a room and open up to a man about that. We go in the bar and we sit down and over something, but yeah, we fight it, but that girl real out, and you're trying to couch it in a certain way, in bro talk, and so it may not even be the most honest of way to deal with the feelings necessarily.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. That is true for a lot of men, but there have men as well who would rather, because we've had experiences with that in terms of, like I said, my background is health, and especially when it comes to male issues.
I could imagine that one. I could imagine that one. And
a man who would relate.
An area where I do notice males rather speak to males is especially young men. Like a 16-year-old boy would more likely speak to a 30-year-old man. I think, again, my opinion, layman's opinion here, a 30-year-old man than a 30-year-old woman, generally, and open up to them. That's in that relation, I see that too.
And
And that was great.
And, if we can carry that a bit further, and one of my perspectives, I believe one of the reasons why crime is as high as it is because we lack a male presence in the homes. A lot of our homes are single parent homes, a lot of females, and as much as we try, I know we have strong, independent women who do a lot for their children, and not knocking at all. What I'm saying is that we do have to acknowledge there is a gender difference, and there are some things that a man could only teach to a man. And that is men without a
Michelle,
stable male presence.
there were quite a few lives where you needed to be here. Whew. Some of these topics.
We got medical backings this young.
Some of these topics, the heat created on some of these topics in some lives. And to me, what you're saying there is demonstrably, observably obvious.
Yeah.
But
It is. Caribbean is highly powerful, and we have some of the highest crime rates per capita. There is a connection there. And it's not saying we're taking away from women, but there's really only certain things that can be taught by a man to a young boy. And that's really gravitate towards, like I said, these gangs, because they're looking for that mentorship, that affirmation from men.
yes, and they get it in the gangs.
It's ironic. It's ironic that this is the last live before Father's Day. Look at the direction this has gone. Praise Jesus.
Positive relation, did you just say that? Or did you mean single mother Father Day? Oh God, you got me and the mother and the father.
But that's a philosophy I have never supported. I began heavily into male mentorship kind of vibes in 2008. And since 2008 to now, I could tell you there have been a lot of changes in it. My personal mentor is a certified social worker, certified mediator. What kind of accolades say his name? And from interacting with him, I learned a lot of things even about myself. Things I would not tell my man, I would call my mentor now for now and share with him.
Yeah.
And he's training all of these things. He's trying to groom me in that direction. But the nature of my voice, and I like to be a little aggressive sometimes, so I would stay away from the social worker side. But sometimes them guys like to have them kind of conversations. And sometimes, like PM mentor, this is the next thing we need to look into. Because it's easier for me to talk to my brethren sometimes than to talk to my older partner. And my brethren might say, boy, you have to run up on that. You have to deal with that dread. But if you have the young man with the skills and the training to say, bro, don't make that move, just think again. Just back a little bit now. Wherever we could communicate, they wouldn't have to reach to Miss Sudan and that level of that problem. Because you have young men now with the skills and the mindset and the qualities, say, bro, boy, get that ease up, boy, take 2 hours and relax, boy, do wild that.
It's true. I agree.
All right.
Just one thing.
That's how I was
Don't worry. Everyone gets a closing, but we're looking to close. It's 11:42, but everyone gets a closing. So go ahead. Who goes first?
I was just gonna I'll just quickly address Leon. Well, he asked what were the requirements to become a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
You need minimum a BSc, bachelor's degree in social work. They offered it at UE, USC. I think Nazarene College has one. So you could just be researching tertiary education institutions, but a minimum social work degree. If you wish to be a medical or psychiatric social worker, your training during your degree has to be in a public health, medical or psychiatric social work setting. So just saying goodnight to everyone. It was really fun. Like I said, I was just kind of passing through and I enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Nathan, for giving me the opportunity. It was nice chatting with you guys, Ronnie. Please, if you need assistance, reach out. All right?
Okay, thanks.
And have a blessed one, guys. Okay. And happy Father's Day to your dads.
Appreciated.
Mm-hmm. And the single mothers.
Ronnie, stop it. Go ahead, Ronnie. I'm listening. What you have to say in closing there?
Who is that, me? Okay, there you go. Yeah, tonight was lovely. I enjoyed Michelle, you know. It was a lovely change. I normally had to be the only woman fighting, but
No,
Michelle
not the
was
only
here.
one, Rooney.
No, I'm talking about in terms of females, I am normally the only female that, you know what I'm saying?
There's someone else
It's not
sometimes.
common. Yeah, but we just be unopposing it. So, but to the point, I think it is important older people, mentorship and stuff like that. Older people have to guide the youth, right? And older men who here, if you're old, like 35 and older, I guess, you have a duty to look back and help the younger ones know what they're doing. I think just like single mothers need to do the same thing. Don't encourage young ladies into single motherhood by telling them like it's so great and I did it, so you could do it too, and that's just bad advice. It's the same thing like the fat community. You're fat and you want everybody to be fat, and it's like, no, baby, I will tell you, do not become fat. You will not enjoy it. It's the same thing. You have a duty to tell people not to do something when you have done it and you experience how hard it is or how bad it is.
I agree.
So, and men do the same thing. You went to jail or you sell drugs or, you know? Don't do it. It's bad. It's hard. And happy Father's Day to all the men out there. All the fathers.
Thank you. Thank you. Positive, you're Hotep. Who next?
I will go. Interesting conversation tonight. I like these types of conversations going forward. Having different perspectives from different individuals who work in the field on the ground, and not just from a political point of view, was interesting. I actually took the opportunity. I've never spent a Father's Day with my father. Never. I'm 25 plus. I've never done it. He lives abroad. So I took the opportunity this time to spend Father's Day with my girlfriend's father on purpose. And I'm really looking forward to the experience, to having that kind of conversation, to rub shoulders with an experienced man. I think we need to do it a lot more often. And happy Father's Day to the guys who have children or planning to have children. Best of luck to you guys in this era, in this generation. We don't need to roll no ID. But guys, let's continue to support one another. It's not ironic. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to add this quick too. Recently, during the week last week, my best friend and I had a situation to deal with. We took the opportunity as young guys to keep each other company. We went driving. Just to clear our heads, we grew up single parent mothers. And we were accused of being homosexual because I posted it's okay to say you appreciate your partner. It's okay to say, bro, thanks for the support, thanks for being there for me. And it got so bad when it was affecting his job. They were attempting to have this young man lose his job because of it. So fellas, check up on your partner still. Get to check up on your partner and to give him a phone call.
Listen.
Good night.
Just now, Trini Hotep. If I hate that kind of stuff, like men could be brethren. Men have been brethren since men have been men. Like, you need your brethren. Forget that kind of nonsense. Go ahead there, Hotep.
That's a little bit ridiculous, but this was a very good live, and this was very informative. I hope we can get more of this in these type of sessions, talk about various other topics. I'm saying big up all the fathers, and what Sunday. Yeah.
Yes.
Fathers are definitely important. I always raise that issue as I did grow up with my father at one point in time, but he was really the best, and that's kind of crazy in of itself. But I really stress the point about fathers being crucial in the society where fathers are being pushed more into a corner. Well, men in per se is being pushed more into a corner and like exiting society in some sort of way. But big up all the fathers, big up all the men. who are positive role models to the next generation of people.
Yeah, man. Big up all the fathers, including myself, you know. When I get my Father's Day on Sunday, you know. That's how the show is. Big father out in the business these days, you know how it goes. Yeah, yes.
Your first Father's Day, Nathan.
Yeah.
How old your child is? Sorry.
Well, she was alive last year. She was alive last year, but she was on the inside. She was still being cooked.
Happy first Father's Day.
She was still being cooked. Now the pie is finished. The bun is out of the oven, and she is live, playful, talkative, loud, lovely, cute bun. All right, people.
Planting can be a buck, eh? Planting can be a buck.
Hey, Sylvan, I didn't even know you're in the live there, man. Happy Father's Day. Thanks for joining in, people. This has been the Mindful Live session. This was nice. Michelle, you didn't take over the live. I like this. I really like this. You provide a professional, knowledgeable input from another perspective. Lovely. Appreciate it. I hope more people could do this same thing. This is what we do on the Mindful Live. We meet here. Well, I come on here around 9:30 on every weeknight. I'll be here again Monday. We aren't here on the weekends. So I will see you guys then. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am your host, Nathan Springer. See you guys later. As per usual, this was brought to you by the Mindful Education, which is the educational institution that I run. We offer learning pods, private tuition if you're interested in anything of the such. We're going to launch a camp. We have education camps on for the Java, the July-August vacation. If you're interested, hit me up. Until Monday, latest folks. Peace.